I hate it when I'm waiting in the waiting room, you know,
Yeah.
as a viewer going, what's up with this? Why aren't they on time?
All right, here we go.
All righty.
Wait for all the attendees to hop in before we get started. Alrighty, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the MassMEP. If you have 30 minutes, you could get $30,000 in new Express Grant Opportunities webinar. Our panelists from Tribal Vision today are Chris Cienci and Rob Meyer. From MassMEP. Oh, you guys want to say hello?
No, just hi, everyone.
From MassMEP, we have with us Haley Steele, our marketing manager, and Lisa Derby-Odin, our grant program manager. I'm Emma Mailman. I'm the marketing coordinator here at MassMEP, and I'll be the moderator for this webinar. Thank you all for joining us. And as you can see, we are in a webinar format, so all of your mics are muted. But there are plenty of ways for you to engage with us this afternoon through the Q&A and chat options on that bottom bar on the Zoom window. Please use the chat option in the Q&A section, the chat, obviously, to chit-chat amongst yourselves. We'll be in this area a lot, just to see you guys' questions, thoughts, and ideas. The Q&A is also open, as I said, and we'll be actively answering questions throughout the webinar today. We have 1 hour set aside for this. I'm not quite sure if it'll take that long, but just so we have the hour to get through everything that we have to go over today. But it's plenty of time for the content and our Q&A section. To be respectful of that, to our panelists and you guys, if we do begin to run over, we will end the webinar as scheduled, but we're going to address everyone's questions through the email addresses that you guys have provided for us. This webinar is also being streamed on the MassMEP Facebook Live, as you guys can tell in that top left-hand corner of your Zoom windows. So if you feel someone would benefit from this information, but they weren't able to attend today, you can send them to the MassMEP YouTube page or Facebook page, and they can follow through those links. So without further ado, let's just begin. If you have 30 minutes, you could get $30,000 in new Express Grant Opportunities webinar. So over to Chris and Rob.
Great. Thanks, Emma. Appreciate it. And not going to, if you want to just get to that next slide, we'll dive in here. Not going to steal MassMEP and Lisa's thunder, but I'll at least set us up by saying that reason why we're super excited about this. It really is true, right? If you have 30 minutes, you could potentially find $30,000 of free training money here. Lisa's going to get into it in a bit, but just know that the modules that I'm going to be talking about and Rob's going to be talking about here from Tribal Vision that we put together, as long as you're under 100 employees and have a certificate of good standing that Lisa will get into and so forth, you can be getting these modules fully reimbursable up to $30,000. So it's sort of huge news here. It's never, at least in my 11 years, it's never happened. So super excited about sharing this with everybody. So I'm going to dive in a little bit now into the modules through MassMEP, right? Tribal Vision is a third-party provider of marketing services to MassMEP clients. So we've teamed up with MassMEP and we've come up with 4 marketing modules. Okay, as you can see here with this slide, module 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to dive in a little bit about what these 4 modules are, And then you might have some questions at the end. So again, feel free to ask away at that point. But I think we've set this up in a very simple way to understand. Number one, you should be thinking about a module, meaning a month's worth of time. So that's usually a question that I've gotten over the years is, okay, what do you mean by a module? Well, again, Tribal Vision, we're a team of about 60 marketing professionals. We would be dedicating a couple person team to you, and they're your team for a month. A month is a module. So if you said, I want to do module 1, just know that it's a month's worth of our time. Module 2 would be month 2. We would then be doing another month. So you can think of it as 4 modules equals 4 months of work and training. Okay, module 1, the way that we would start out working together would be, the way we've set this up is we're calling this our strategy and planning module. Okay, that we've set up directly with the state that they've already approved. Okay, so for this module or for this first month, we would be helping you and training you on putting together an actual marketing strategy, a marketing plan. So for the manufacturers that are on this that either A, don't have a marketing plan whatsoever, and I'm going to argue most of you don't. I've been doing this for about a decade with manufacturers. We would in this module put together a marketing plan for you and train you on how to put that together. Okay, so your team would then be able to say, okay, I'm now fully educated to how to put this together. And to be clear, this isn't just classroom training where we're just showing you how to do that. That's what consortiums are for. If anyone's been part of some of MassMEP consortiums, it's classroom training. In this instance, it's training by doing. So we're actually putting together the marketing strategy at Tribal Vision, and we're then, while we're doing that, we're training you on how we've done it. Okay, so that's module 1, is putting together a marketing strategy. And for those, let's say 20% of manufacturers on this Zoom that say, I already have a strategy, well, we would then take a hard look at that and then help you bring that to the next level. Okay, because most likely you might say, yeah, I have a strategy. I've got it right here. It's a Word document. It's a page. It's 2 pages. That's all I need. We would be helping you build that into a 30-page marketing plan that is extremely impactful in this module. So if you have one or you don't have one, we can be helping you and training you on this as well. So that's module 1, month 1. That then flows into the next 3 modules, which are, as you can see here, implementation modules. Okay, so just know that for the, and I'll get into these in just a sec with later slides, but just know with these 3 modules, we're then working side by side with a point person on your team of executing what the strategy dictates. Okay, so again, we're in the trenches, whether it's putting together Google paid search campaigns or email campaigns or other social media or digital advertising. We're doing the work and then training you as we go as to how it's done, so that when we're done with this, you can be fully trained on how to be doing this self-sufficiently. Okay, so that's what modules 2, 3, and 4 are. If you want to just flip the slide there, Emma. So here's again a little bit more specific to module 1, right? As I mentioned, the strategic marketing planning module. That's where the skills that you're going to be obtaining are understanding market research and how to conduct a marketing audit, right? You're going to be gathering increased knowledge of and ability to examine possible marketing channels and tactics that you should be using for lead generation, right? And also overall building an online presence and relationship here with your target audiences. Those are the skills that you're going to be attaining, right, with developing this marketing strategy. To be clear, again, we're going to be doing that as an extension of your team, and we're then going to be training you as we're doing it. Okay, so that's the module 1, a little bit more detail. What you can expect from this module at the end is, again, a full 30-page or so, 25 to 30-page marketing strategy. Okay, broken down into, typically it would be broken down into a brand section, right? What do your marketing assets look like? What does your website look like? How can those be strengthened? Do you have any presentation decks or sales literature? Does that need to be strengthened? Right. So first section of your strategy would be what we call your owned assets. Okay. To the world, what do you look like? Do you look as credible as you really are, or do you don't, or don't you? So we can help you, train you on how to bring that to the next level. Second section would be lead generation. So we always like to say, once you're dressed appropriately for the party, for those that don't know you, in that section will train you on how to best introduce your company to new prospects. It's all about lead generation. So we're going to be training you, doing and training all on that. And then lastly, there's going to be a reporting section that talks all about, okay, how can we actually track and learn how to put dashboards in place and key performance indicators in place so we can actually see if the plan is working or not. So that's a little bit more sort of meat to the bone here for module 1.
You know what I'd like to add there, Chris?
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
No,
You know what I'd love to add though, because the way that you laid that out, it might sound to somebody on the call that or on the webinar that it's very cut and dry. This is exactly what's going to go into this. In actuality, although the sections that Chris laid out there are, 9 times out of 10 exactly the various sections in the strategy that we build out for you, it is going to at the same time be very, very customized and specific to your exact need at the time that we're really jumping in, doing that preliminary audit, and then looking at the various areas that Chris described, i.e. branding, lead gen, and reporting. So don't feel like, wait a second, is this a cookie cutter plan that applies to everybody? Not at all. It's totally custom to your specific needs.
Yep, and you'll be trained in that fashion as well.
Exactly.
Okay, and then Emma, if you want to just bring us to the next slide. Right, so then that flows to implementation 1, we're calling it with the state, right, which is module 2, but implementation 1, right, where ultimately the way that we've packaged this module and the next 2 modules of implementation is, we're saying, okay, if you didn't do a strategy, okay, let me just finish here because this might get confusing for a second. If you didn't do a strategy and you just want to start with module 2, which I don't recommend, if you did that, then just know that you have to specifically fit, and be trained on exactly the skills that we're talking about here. So as you can see with this module, it would be Google Analytics, right? It would be a lot about Google paid advertising, right? It would be creating, launching, and optimizing what we call retargeting campaigns, right? And also, again, putting in the necessary reporting. If you didn't do the strategy and said, I just want to start with module 2, then this is exactly what we're going to do for you. We can't veer from that because this is what the state has approved. Same thing with module 3, same thing with module 4. The good news is if you start with the first module with strategy and planning in the training, whatever we say, this is what is needed to grow your business, that then is able to then flow through to these modules, because in each of these implementation modules, at the end, it says, these activities and trainings are subject to change based on what the strategy and planning module dictates. If you don't do the strategy and planning module, it's going to be very rigid, like I just explained. Good news is, if you start with the strategy and planning module, then that gives you flexibility with what needs to be trained on for these 3 modules I'm talking about. So frankly, that happens all the time when we do these. So I can go over what module 2 exactly is, what module 3 exactly is. Just know that you're not going to really need to know that too much if you're starting with module 1. And like I said, all companies, frankly, that we've worked with have always started with the strategy module. Okay, so that, Emma, if you don't mind, just so you can flip to the next slide. I'm going to be fast on this, right? Because I just said this is sort of flexible at this point, but just know, right, this is where if you were to just decide, I just want module 3, that's where we'd be setting up and managing your Google paid search campaigns, creating and deploying, right, content calendars and social media strategy and training you on that, right, developing and launching email campaigns, and then training you on how to identify and target new prospects. Okay, so that's what this module would be if you didn't start with module 1. And lastly, Emma, if you just want to go to the next, the rounding out our modules here, this is where we would be training you and developing on what we call account-based marketing campaigns. And just very quickly, what account-based marketing means is, if you're a manufacturer and you're a B2B selling to other businesses manufacturer, that's what from our experience, most manufacturers are doing. You want to be, targeting your top 100 prospects, right? Let's, instead of doing just social media blasts using TikTok and Instagram that aren't going to work for you, that's more mass marketing. We can be very precise with, let's find the 100 companies you want to go after or distributors. And then from there, do a multi-channel campaign, just targeting those individuals at those 100 companies. That's what account-based marketing is. Okay, so you would be trained in this module all on how to do that. And again, we would be training and doing. Second, we would be looking at your CRM, customer relationship management software. That's where, again, if you have Salesforce, if you have HubSpot, if you have some type of CRM, we would be helping and training you on how to optimize that. If you don't have anything in place, we would be then helping you like select what the right CRM is, training you on what's out there, and then helping you actually set this up properly. Okay, and then lastly, we would be looking here in the last bullet, you see leveraging modern sales outreach tools. We would be training you on realistically 5 to 10 very impactful outreach tools that you can be setting up, and we'd help set up for you with your business on how to sell more efficiently, especially online and digitally now, right? The days of just shaking hands and just going to a trade show, they're diminishing compared to what you can be doing online. So I'll give you a sneak preview, right? You might not have heard of like Vidyard before. That's a really cool tool you can use for video interaction with prospects. We would be looking at what a platform, frankly, that we're even now testing out for ourselves called Client Point, where all of your sales forces or distributors selling or sales reps selling can happen through a branded digital experience. Okay, probably haven't heard of that before, but that's where marketing is going and sales is going. We would be training on all of that and implementing that for you in this module. That being said, remember, I want to keep reinforcing it's not so cookie cutter, as Rob said earlier about our strategy, because it's all subject to be flexible based on what the strategy dictates.
Right.
Okay, because most of the time over the years doing this, companies, manufacturers say, I don't need this exactly. And I always have to say, yeah, that's fine. As long as you start with a strategy and it dictates what's needed, then we're okay.
Right.
Okay, so these are the 4 modules in depth, right? That I just wanted to go into. And Emma, if you just want to get to the next slide here. I would just say I'm going to stop here, right? I know this is where we're going to transition to MassMEP, but I will say that, and this is where Lisa will get into the details, but just know, as I mentioned early on, the really cool news is before these modules were not reimbursed 100%. At this point, if you're less than 100 employees, there is funding available for you to then be able to have someone at MassMEP walk you through how you can actually take advantage of these modules and potentially pay very little, if nothing, for the work and the training that Tribal Vision would be doing. So with that, Lisa, I don't know if you want to take over from there and talk a little bit more about how MassMEP can help in the process.
Sure thing, Chris, and thanks for the great setup.
Sure.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Okay, folks, I'm very pleased to be here today, and I'm even more glad that you're here today. So I want to talk a little bit about some funding that's available for you as a Massachusetts employer to help you, get this wonderful training and assistance that Chris has just shared with you. There is something, in case you're not aware of this, some companies are and some aren't. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of this, which is, in case you're not aware of this, there is a workforce training fund in Massachusetts, and it's for businesses of all sizes, but it is really geared towards the small and medium-sized businesses. And this grant funding is actually money that you have paid into the unemployment tax system as a business in the state. So, it's like you getting your own money back to take advantage of this, which is really great. There's a couple of different kinds of grants. We're going to really focus on the express grant here today, but I'll just mention that there's also a general grant, excuse me, that can also be set up as a consortium grant. And those grants are much bigger. They're for, planning out a training strategy over a 2-year time frame, and you can get up to $250,000. And in those grants, you must match dollar for dollar the amount of training that you're asking for. For example, if you ask for $50,000 worth of training, it is then your workforce's hours that you're paying for that's spent in training that's considered the match. The Express grant is really the star of the show here today, because there's been some changes made in this just recently that were just implemented on July 1st that are phenomenal. And what that is it used to be the Express grant was originally available only to companies of 100 or less. And that got changed to being to businesses of all sizes. So now any business can apply for an Express grant. The sweet spot here is that if you're 100 employees or less, that you can get up to 100% reimbursement of the training that you've applied for. If you're over 100, you can get 50% reimbursement, which is still great. But this is, if you are applying for Chris's training and you're 100 employees or less, you can pretty much get that all paid for, which is wonderful. So you are eligible for up to $30,000 per year or $3,000 per employee per course. Next slide, Emma. This is just a breakdown of what I just said. It's a more visual representation. And sometimes that clicks better with some folks. So I like to have this slide in here as well. It just shows you that the Workforce Training Fund is the organization that leads this, and that these funds are available to you in a couple of different ways. Next slide, Emma. Okay, so here's an eye chart. I know we all love these, right? But this makes sure that I don't skip any details of the topic here. And we're going to pretty much just concentrate on that right column where it says Express program. And so basically who can apply? Again, we've already said that businesses of any size in Massachusetts can apply for this grant. You qualify if you pay into the unemployment tax program. If you're not paying into that, then you're not going to apply, you're not going to qualify for this, okay? And one of the ways that they actually kind of check to make sure that you're all up to date on all your taxes and that kind of thing is down there in the 5th or 6th box down that talks about how to apply. It talks about applying for the certificate of good standing, okay? This is something you should do first and right off. This is free. Massachusetts actually has 2 certificates of good standing. I know, not to confuse anybody, right? One of them costs like $12 or something like that. And they won't accept that one. So don't spend your $12. Go to, if you're interested in doing this grant, then work with us and we'll direct you to the correct spot to get the free one. And that's one of the first steps that you will have to do. Again, a lot of people say, well, there must be some kind of, I must have to, pay for this somehow. There's got to be a hitch here somehow. What do I have to pay in to get this training? But again, if you're 100 or fewer employees, this is 100% reimbursable, and 100 or more, 50% reimbursable. You don't have to pay in because you've already paid into that system. As far as what can the grant funds be used for, there is an Express grant directory that we will provide the training numbers to you for that relate to Chris's offerings, so that you can pull up exactly the training that you're looking for. There's a lot of other kinds of trainings and vendors and that kind of thing, and they're related to other topics, but we help get you directed right to where you need to be. The grant limit, like we said, is up to $30,000 per calendar year. So for example, we are in 2021. If you have not accessed the express funds yet this year, then between now and December 31st, you are still eligible for $30,000. And then come January 1st, you're eligible for another $30,000 right away. Okay. We already talked about how to apply. We can walk you through the application process. The link is right here in this slide for the Workforce Training Fund. A couple of weeks ago, I walked a client through applying for the Express grant, and they loved it. I got to tell you what, because they just finished working on a general grant that took them considerable time that's involved in those. And we got done doing the Express grant, and he goes, seriously, 23 minutes? Like this. So he was thrilled. Okay, so what are the deadlines on this? So you have to apply for any of this funding, the express funding money, at least 21 days prior to the training starting. You can't, if you start the training and you haven't been approved yet, that's a no-no. You're going to have to pay for that yourself. Okay, so you want to apply for the funding. Once you've gotten approved, they will send you a quick contract to sign. Once that's signed, then bingo, you can get going with the training. Okay, this is sort of a rolling application basis. There's not really deadlines for that. It's sort of that reverse deadline, if you will, of, at least 21 days in advance. I know a lot of companies that we're working with right now, their turnaround time has actually been, they applied last week and they're being approved this week. That can vary. That's why they give you that 21-day time frame. But right now, it's very, very quick. Again, selection process, funding is subject to availability, and it's on a first come, first served basis. And the training must be work related, which obviously this marketing training is. And then length and waiting period. Once you have been contracted, you must utilize your training dollars within a 24-month period. And there's on this particular grant, there is no waiting period for additional funding. You could have a couple of these grants at the same time. So next slide, Emma. So again, this is sort of just the process that you would go through. You'd pick the course, which is these marketing modules. You would gather your application materials, which would be your certificate of good standing. You may well have had a conversation with the training provider to sort of figure out when you might want to schedule this training. And then you would apply for the funding. Once you hear about your approval, then you contract, and then from there you set up the training, you get going with the training, you complete the training, and then once you've paid the training invoice, you submit those back to Workforce Training Fund, and you get reimbursed for that training. Next slide, Emma. Okay, so here's my contact information if you need any help working on an express grant. And we also have a point of contact that I believe Haley is going to maybe tell you about here to work on with these grants as well. Certainly, if you have any questions whatsoever about these grants, I'm happy to answer them.
All right, so I know Emma is gonna, she's gonna close all this out, but there are a couple of questions that have come up. One of them, Chris and Rob would this is gonna fall onto you, is if a organization, manufacturer per se, doesn't necessarily have a quote unquote marketing department, or maybe it is an individual that shares many hats. Can they do this? Is this possible for them as well?
Yeah, I'll jump in first. Rob, add any flavor, but yeah, I mean, sure. Tribal Vision, for what it's worth, Tribal Vision was started, I founded this about 11 years ago for that reason. There's so many mid-market companies that are out there that don't have a marketing team, don't even have a full-time marketer. And so, early on, 100% of our clients was the instance that you just mentioned, Haley, where we're just rolling up directly to the CEO or COO or whoever it might be, and we are handling all of the marketing. And so that's still probably north of 60% of our client base are companies that don't have a marketing function. They know that it's needed. And then we would then just be rolling up and training or speaking with whoever the senior leadership team is there at that manufacturing facility. So yeah, this is, yes, every day we're speaking to clients, not prospects that are in that person's shoes.
The thing too that I would add there, Chris, is that with the training component, because organizations that don't have a marketing department might think like, well, how is this training going to work then? Am I training, everybody on the team that, are not going to have use for this particular piece of the marketing training? Not at all, actually. So the way that training is really going to work is that the people that, are going to be on the need to know basis, the folks that are going to want to be able to dive into the platform and see, their website traffic or whatever it may be, those are going to be the people that we make sure are in the room for that training. And then if it's not applicable to you, we're not going to have you in the training.
Okay, so another question that came in was, this actually probably is going to be more for Lisa on the grant side of things. So the question was, if somebody does apply for the Workforce Training Fund and they don't get accepted, is there a limit on how many times they can reapply, or are they able to reapply? I think you probably have a circumstance as to why most cases they don't get accepted, correct, Lisa?
So in my experience, there's been very few that have not been accepted, and frequently the problem lies more in if you're not up to date on your taxes for some reason and can't get your certificate of good standing, you're going to have to wait until you can get that. What I will say is the Workforce Training Fund folks, they are great to work with. Okay, so if they deny you funds for some reason, they tell you why. Okay, so that then you can go back and you can improve your answers or whatever. But that's really related more to the general grant. Here with the express grant, there are not a lot of questions that you have to answer. It's a very streamlined, very simple process.
Okay, cool. So there is another question that came in. So it says module 1 is 4 weeks from start to finish. How many hours of training is needed to complete the module?
Yeah, I believe we have down there, I've got to, again, relook at this, but I believe it's around 16 hours or so, 15, 16 hours of training. And so, and it's pretty simple from what we've done in the past is there would just be a sign-in sheet for the individuals that would be trained. And we would just make sure part of what Tribal Vision would be doing would be to make sure that we're making, we're doing that type of training. So short answer is, I believe it's 16 hours. There would be a sign-in sheet of who's been trained, and that's the level of rigor.
Okay, so another question, Chris, that then Rob, that's coming in is when doing these events, and you talk about the implementation process, and you're actually going in and visiting, is what would happen? Of course, unfortunately, we've been through a year and a half, or like Rob likes to call it, 20 years of time where we've been put in this capsule almost. So if something like that were to occur again, and you're in the middle of trying the implementation process, do you have a workaround on that, or how does that get handled? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so we've been even through COVID, through these, let's say 18 months, we're frankly thriving right now. And the reason is we don't have to be meeting in person for us to get done what we need to get done for our clients. It's all virtual. And so if it's needed, we certainly can come in and shake hands and be there in person. But most companies are very comfortable at this point, whether they're being trained or whether we're actually doing the work, just having these types of Zoom presentations. And but if there is a need, so to answer your question also, Haley, though, if there's like an event or if we have to be somewhere, helping in any way, we'll certainly do that as well.
Okay.
But yeah, nowadays it's, everything is pretty virtual, and companies are very comfortable. And frankly, they're not losing anything with that. I mean, even with the consortiums I do with you guys with MassMEP, used to be all in person.
Yeah.
Now it's all virtual. And I'd argue we're getting just as high of ratings from companies virtually as we were in person.
Yeah, I agree. I love how you usually say shaking hands and kissing babies, Chris, but I do enjoy that you took out the kissing babies part of it. Now you're just shaking hands. So I was
Trying to
a
be
little
politically
nervous
correct.
there. Yeah, a little nervous there. I was hoping you guys still weren't doing the whole kissing babies part, but yeah. So that's all I have for questions. I know Emma's going to close it out before she does close it out. So Manny, go ahead, Chris.
I have two more practical nuggets, I think, for everyone.
Yes.
One is a question for Lisa that I think I know the answer for, because again, we've done this for years, but be good for people to hear. How long does reimbursement take, right? Because from my experience, Lisa, once someone shows proof that they've paid for the training and it's then submitted, what my experience has been is within 30 days, the state then reimburses them. Is that accurate?
Yes, they're very good on their, turnaround time on that.
Exactly. So, that's hopefully one other practical nugget, and that I just get all the time when people ask these types of questions of me, that someone might not be thinking yet, but they might be when they start to get serious about this. Second point that I'm asked all the time when it comes to the modules is just know, and this is, again, just very practical. If you add up all the modules for pricing for these modules, right, and how it relates to reimbursement, okay, and this is what Manny Jerome, who will be reaching out to you if you're interested, will talk to you about, but I'll give you a sneak peek. These modules, soup to nuts, module 1 through 4 total, let me think about this for 1 sec. I think it's $46,800. It's $15,000 for module 1 for the strategy, and then it's $11,200 per module for the next 3. So if you add all that up, it's $46,800. And then so the next question is going to be, okay, how can we maximize this? Right? We have up to 30,000 per calendar year, as Lisa said. So just know that the way a lot of manufacturers we're speaking to right now are thinking about this are, why don't we apply? We can do modules 1 and 2 starting in November, not immediately, November, December. We can apply in November for modules 3 and 4 for January and February of 2022. That will enable you to not have stoppage of our training and can allow you to have full reimbursement of all of the modules. That's what most manufacturers are doing today. You don't have to. You could say, no, I don't want to wait. I want to start now. You can do 2 modules now, let's say September, October, and then we do the final 2 in January, February. Or if you really are anxious, you just do all 4 and you're just going to get reimbursed 30,000 of the 48,600. Most companies are not doing that. They want to maximize reimbursement, understandably. So just thought that would be another practical nugget for everyone to know that in the way I just explained it, you could get all 4 of these modules fully reimbursed.
Lisa, do you know if you have to prove to the Commonwealth that you have used those funds by the end, like 12/31/21? Do you have to show proof of that, or it's just, do you know any of the specifics on that? Because I know that's a question that's coming up.
Well, you have to pay for it first, so you're going to have an invoice, and so that invoice is going to have a date on it. So I would say yes.
Perfect. So as long as you have an invoice that shows that you used up to $30,000 of that in that year, you should be good. Okay. All right. We do also have, we are putting together a little video. It's about a 3.5 minute video on the massmep.org website that will be available for everybody to access. We're just getting some final approvals on it, and then we will release it. And it's a simple process to show you basically how to walk through the Express Grant process. That doesn't mean that we still aren't here, that we are always here to help you walk through that process. But if you want to try to tackle it on your own and you're like, oh, let's see if I can do this, there's a video available. But for those of you that still, we are here and we can help out with that too. I did put Lisa's information in the chat and Manny's information in the chat. And Manny Jerome is our lead BDA, business development advisor, and couldn't be on today. So I, fortunately for him, get to be his mouthpiece. I'm going to say fortunately. Rob's laughing like, oh no, wrong person to pick to be the mouthpiece for Manny. No, that's Manny, but Chris is spot on with it when it comes to, you know, Manny knows this inside and out, and this is one of his, he's very passionate about the marketing and lead gen, probably because of his past and where he comes from and a lot of the work that he has done. And he's also very passionate about MassMEP and helping manufacturers out. That was another question too that did come in. Lisa, is this just for manufacturers? Because they look at us and go, manufacturing extension partnership. Is it just for manufacturers?
The Workforce Training Fund?
Yes.
No, it's for any business in Massachusetts, and
Okay.
and nonprofits can also qualify as well. So
Okay.
it's any business that is paying into that unemployment tax system.
Okay. All right. But we specialize in, obviously we've got a
Correct.
soft spot for our manufacturers in the state of Massachusetts. So yeah.
Not
so
only a
that's,
soft spot, it's our mandate.
oh yeah, there is that part of it too. I like to call it a soft spot.
Before we end, I'll also be a mouthpiece for Manny and just say, because I've worked with Manny now for a long time, I will tell you he's fantastic.
Yeah.
From my experience, where every manufacturer, where it might be intimidating to be like, oh my God, that whole sheet that we just went over, there's so many steps to applying. Manny literally, and I'm not exaggerating this, he can, if needed, he can handhold you through the process. He'll tell you it ultimately takes you, maybe once you get that certificate of good standing, as Lisa said, with Manny involved, it'll take you like 30 minutes, right? Where he can handhold you through everything, show you exactly the boxes to check, what's needed. So just don't also think this is intimidating. It literally can be, Manny, can you help me out? And he can be walking you through it and make this like very pain-free for you. I've seen it many times.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that. It's, you know, prior to MassMEP, Manny, you know, ran a manufacturing company, and he discovered the Workforce Training Fund grants through the assistance with MassMEP, and he was flabbergasted at what a great resource those grants are, and MassMEP was, and that kind of thing. So he's walked it himself, and has that real life comparison to make.
Yep. Okay, that's all I have, at least. Sorry to keep butting in here, but trying to
I was
add
waiting
as
for
much
someone
value
else
as
to
I
go.
can.
No, just to close it out, I just wanted to thank everyone for attending the webinar today. We appreciate everyone taking time out of their days to join us for this. And a thank you to you guys for sharing some of the amazing opportunities that are now available to small manufacturers and businesses. But as Haley said, Manny is the point of contact. Again, unfortunately, he isn't here, but the email is shared in the chat window. And if you have other questions, you can feel free to reach out to us at massmep.org through the Contact Us page on our website. But yeah, again, just a thank you to everyone, and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.